Happy first day of Halloween, or happy first day of the official spooky season, happy first day of October, or I guess for you it will be happy beginning of October. Whenever it is, happy beginning of the spooky season. We're here, we're in October, and that means that we're gonna do a September wrap-up, which is really exciting because the first video I filmed and posted was my August wrap-up, and now we're in September. Look it! I made it a full month. Let's just start wrapping up the books because I also read a lot this month, and I'm worried it's gonna be another really long video. So let's just get started. Okay, the first book I read this month was The Binding by Bridget Collins. That's gonna be over here. I'm never gonna stop making this gesture because it's so fun, and I'm just, look, it's here. There you go. Okay, anyway, so this is set in a world where there's this book magic where you can take your memories and bind them in a book, and when you do that, you no longer have those memories, but anyone can go and read that, and they can go and read your memories, but then you no longer have them. But then if the book is destroyed, then you get your memories back. We're following our main guy named Emmett, and at the beginning of the book, he essentially goes and trains to be one of these binders. Through a certain set of circumstances, it's determined that he will be one of the people that bind the memories in the books. And that's really all I can say. This book is really interesting in that it has 3 very distinct parts. It was a really exciting concept, and I honestly did not know anything about the book. When I went in, I knew it was about like this book magic and whatever, but that's all I knew. Because I feel like you can't talk about it without diving into different parts. I was kind of let down by this book, I hate them starting on a book that I wasn't super hyped about, but I wasn't. But regardless, so I didn't super love this book. I felt like the 3 parts are very distinct from each other, and they didn't flow that well together. Like, we're following the same characters in all of them. It felt disjointed, and I had like vastly different enjoyment levels for each of the parts, which isn't really what you want. So I felt like I was kind of like thrown around. I was like, okay, now this is happening, I guess, and this is how I'm feeling about it. Thinking back, I kind of wish that the first part was just a preface or just a much shorter part of the books. It's not that relevant to the rest of the story, and I wish that instead of that first part, we had another part after what the book ended with, because the book ended pretty abruptly. I don't know, I didn't love it, a whole bunch. And I wish that I had, but I don't know, I don't have much to say about this. I think it's also, I just personally didn't gel with it, and I don't think it's a bad book overall, so I don't want to keep harping on it, because maybe you'll like it. The next book I read was a long one. It is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I listened to this on audio, and I had a great time. I don't know, I had decided one day that I was like, I want to read Anna Karenina. I'd heard someone say that they liked it, and I was like, I haven't read that, I'll like it. And then got the audiobook from the library, and it was 33 hours long. But put it on double speed, made it through. I had an enjoyable time. So Anna Karenina follows people in Russia. So Anna Karenina was originally published in Russian in 1878, but it just kind of follows some fairly wealthy people in this time period. You would think it mostly just follows Anna Karenina. I would argue that it doesn't. I would argue that she's not the main character in this story. But Anna Karenina, I guess, kind of like ties all the different characters together. They all have a connection to her. But she is a young and beautiful woman who is married to, I'm pretty sure her husband's older, and they have a son together, and everything kind of changes and gets all mixed up when she starts to have an affair with a man who coincidentally has the same name as her husband. I don't really know why we couldn't just think of a different name. Leo, could we work on that? But she starts to have an affair with this man, and things start to unfold and get complicated from there. And I don't know, I enjoyed this much in the same way that I enjoy Jane Austen books. It was just a good time to read about these people, these wealthy people in Russia and their lives and the weird issues that they have. I don't think this book changed my life, but I just found it super enjoyable. Like I said, this book I feel like is incorrectly titled. I definitely think that there are some other characters that would be the main character, I would say. For example, Levin, and I've seen some people say that Levin is basically Tolstoy, like he is the self-insert character, which I think makes a whole bunch of sense because we often have pages worth of Levin just talking about his opinions on the oligarchies and the peasants, because it had recently just changed and the peasants are no longer, there's no serfdom, I don't think, or I don't really know. I don't know much about Russian history, but so he has lots of opinions on the goings on in Russia and lots of opinions on farming. My God, this man has lots of opinions on how to correctly farm different plants, which is wild. I would definitely say that we kind of track his story with his love interest more than we do Anna Karenina's. Like I said, this book, it's super, super long. And it feels pretty long. But reading the audiobook helped, and when I started out reading it, I had Spark Notes pulled up, and I would kind of follow along with Spark Notes to make sure I kind of understood what was happening, and then after a while I felt like I was able to abandon that and just listen, and like I said, I was honestly pretty surprised how much I enjoyed this. It was a good time. The next book I read was Felix Ever After by Kaysen Callender. This is a super popular book on BookTube and everything. It kind of just took everyone by storm. So Felix Ever After follows our main character, Felix. And this is about him. He's a transgender teen, and we follow him as he's trying to figure out his identity and the nuances within that. We really see Felix grapple with the idea that he's maybe one too many marginalizations. He's Black, queer, transgender. He just kind of feels like that's too much and nothing, he can't find love, nothing will really work out for him. But then one day he walks into a school and someone has posted photos of him all over the hallways pre his transition and including his dead name. So that's pretty intense and obviously it's very upsetting. Felix is just mad, so he decides to get revenge and he decides to catfish to get back at the person who did this to him. I really enjoyed this book. I think especially after the first quarter mark, I kind of struggled getting involved in it, but after just a bit, I just inhaled this and I finished it in one sitting. I don't know why. I was just I was in one of those moods and I was like, I'm just reading all of this right now. This book is really messy. The characters are messy. They have flaws. They all have every single character has distinct flaws. It's also a book about redemption and about growth, and you see almost all of the characters grow so much from when you first met them. You watch them find out who they are and decide what's important to them, and they make mistakes, and like I said, they get messy, but I feel like it really ends up being good, and I got a lot out of this and I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a really good depiction of teenagers right now, because you'll read a book and you're like, this was written by an adult or it's like, this is just not how teenagers are, and I am now an adult and not a teenager, so who am I to say, but I really feel like it felt authentic, and I'm just excited for current high school aged people to be reading these books. There's so many out there that are so diverse and important and incredible. This book is just, like I said, it's all about mostly Felix figuring out his identity and what that means for him and who he is as a person. I just think it's great. The next book I read is Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. This is a book that is written in reverse. So it follows two characters who are in a relationship, but right at the beginning of the book they break up, and then it follows them throughout the relationship going backwards in time. So eventually by the end you see them meet for the first time and start the relationship. It's a really unique concept, and so I was intrigued to pick it up, but also I know Hazel Hayes. I don't actually know her. That sounds like I'm friends with her. God, I wish. No. Hazel's a YouTuber, and she's been posting videos for, a while now, and I've been watching her at least since beginning of college. I think maybe even high school. It was kind of one of those things where it was like, the idea is kind of interesting, but mostly I really like Hazel and I love her videos, so I wanted to pick up her book and read it. The thing about this book is the reading experience was a 10 out of 10, absolutely the best, and that's purely because I read this with my best friend Fiona. We started reading this in June and would read a chapter and then FaceTime and talk about it and then read another chapter. It was such a good time. And then at the end of the last chapter, we read it together. Like, we were on FaceTime and we traded off paragraphs, and it was great and adorable and fun. So purely because of that, this was an amazing reading experience. Unfortunately, the book itself, I don't think is quite at the same level as the reading experience I had for it. It's a really unique idea, it being told in backwards, but like, I hate to say, I kind of feel like books are written in chronological order for a reason. I just kind of found myself not really that interested in what was happening next because I ultimately already knew it. I also got really hung up in trying to figure out where I was in the timeline of everything. Like, we would go to the next chapter and then she'd start talking and I was like, well, how, a year has passed? Like, how long ago was this? Which I think is a me issue because I don't think Fiona did that as much, but nonetheless, it was distracting for me. Also, Fiona will know I often, we would read a chapter or like read a part and there'd be a character that I was super interested in and I really liked them, and then, but our main character had just met her, and so I was like, well, we're never gonna see her again because if we're just meeting her, she's not gonna be in the rest of the books. We're going backwards, and so it's just like things like that. I do know that this was picked up to be a TV show, and I think maybe it'll be better as a TV show. I don't know, I just like get that feeling, so I'll definitely check that out. Another thing to note is this definitely felt like a kind of like self-insert story, like Hazel's writing about her own experiences, which of course it is. Like, of course she's going to do that. I think it's just difficult when I already know quite a bit about Hazel and her past relationships. So it was hard for me to not just be like, oh, this is her doing this. This is when this happened. Also, her main character is nameless, which didn't help because then I just kept being like, Hazel said this, like when the main character was talking. Again, I know that often happens, especially in a first book by an author. She was very clear in saying that this book is based on her own life experiences. Like, I think it was just a little distracting for me. I just kept doing that. But also, I don't know, you could argue it was more fun for that because I was able to be like, that's what Hazel did this, and go on and on. Okay, so my camera stopped recording. So sorry if this is a completely different frame or angle or anything, but hopefully it's not that bad. Hopefully it's not confusing. So essentially, I'll pick up more things that Hazel writes if she writes any more books in the future. No, just at the end of the day, a really fun reading experience. I loved reading it with Fiona, but a little disappointed by the book. I don't know. Okay, the next book I read is Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. I read this book on audio and I just adored it. I think Pet is incredible. I just love the book so much. This is set in a world where there are no monsters. They're just all gone. They were defeated and banished by angels. But everything that our main character knows is kind of put on its head when she discovers a creature crawling out of her mother's painting. And this creature tells her that there is still a monster loose, and it asks her to assist them in getting the monster and defeating it. This was such a good book. It's a really short book, so I recommend picking it up. I think it's really easy to get through and quick, and like I said, I really, really enjoyed the audiobook, so definitely look into that. I think Akwaeke Emezi's writing is just superb. It felt like a fairy tale. This book is really good. And one of the dialogues it has is that monsters don't always look like monsters. You have an idea of what a monster is or looks like or acts like, but sometimes it's a lot harder than that to see them. And this was just so good and valuable. Something that I really, really liked about this was the diversity included in this book. Our main character is a trans girl, but that's not a part of the book. She just is. She also is often nonverbal, so there's a lot of sign language used. I just thought that was spectacular, and we definitely need the books like Felix Ever After, where the book is about Felix and his identity, and that discussion is so important, but equally important is having characters who just are diverse, who just are trans, or just are a person of color or have a disability, and that's just a part of them. The book isn't about that, so it's important to have both of these. Pet just does it really well. All of the characters are really well done in this book. I adore Redemption, Pet's best friend. He's amazing, and I love their friendship so much. It's I love the way they communicate. They're constantly checking up on each other and saying, like, are you okay? Is this okay for you? And because they know each other, they know the things that they know each other's trauma. They know the things that are upsetting to them, to each other. So they're checking up on each other and just being the best. So I love them a lot. This book was just really good. I highly recommend it. And it's hard to talk about because it's so short, so I don't want to give too much away. But I really recommend picking it up. The next book I read was The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I read this on audio, and I also read the sequel, so I read both of these. But I'll only be talking about the first book because I can't really tell what the second book's about. But the first book follows Fitz as a very young boy. I think when we start, he's around 6. And Fitz is the bastard son of one of the princes in this kingdom. And we start off with him being sent to go live in the castle. And so it's about Fitz figuring out where he belongs in this castle, as he's kind of an outsider. Not kind of, he absolutely is an outsider. So he's figuring that out, and while he's doing that, he's discovering magic, like the wit, which is this magic that's really frowned upon and only some people have it, but it allows him to communicate and create bonds with animals, which is amazing. But he also is training to become an assassin. He's an assassin's apprentice. So this was a really good time. I really enjoyed this. I would say it's a very classic fantasy book, which is not bad. It's just, I think the best way that I can describe it, it was cozy in that way, in that it was a fantasy book and easy to sink into. But I will say that Robin Hobb is not afraid to put her characters through it. Wow. She's just like, hey, this is a rough world. We're going to have your characters that you love a lot feel that. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you are. I really enjoyed this. Obviously, enjoyed it enough to immediately pick up the second book. I thought the characters were really well fleshed out and they're interesting. There's a lot of compelling discussions about royalty, and it's really interesting to watch Fitz as he has to grapple choosing between being loyal to his family and working for his family, but also being an individual, and when those two compete with each other is really fascinating to watch, and watch him make these really hard decisions where he has this connection. There's one thing that he should do that benefits all these other people, but then to benefit himself purely, there's other things he needs to do, so he's balancing that and trying to make decisions. I thought both of these were really good. I'm excited to continue on. There's one more book in this trilogy. I just know if I don't pick up the third book soon that that'll be the end, and I just won't continue reading, so I really need to pick up the third book soon. But these were both very good. Finally, we can talk about a book that I actually own. So the next book I read is The Word for Woman is Wilderness. I feel like I've talked about this a lot recently, but this is, all I knew about it and what I've been saying about it is that it's like a feminist take on Into the Wild. But really what this is it follows Abby. So this is I'm not actually sure. Okay, so this is what the inside flap says, because I've been going back and forth between calling it fiction and a memoir. But this is what it says. It says, this book is a fictional time capsule comprised of personal narrative, fact, anecdote, images, and maps on subjects as diverse as, and it lists a lot of subjects. So I think the confusing part and what led me to be confused, and I think this book is a little confused, is I don't know if it's a memoir or not. And knowing that kind of makes me review it differently. So this book follows Abby as she decides to travel. She's 19 from England. She decides to travel to Alaska, much like Chris McCandless did in Into the Wild, and have her Into the Wild moment. Go out in Denali National Park and live there, completely cut off from everything else. But it follows her getting to that point also. So we go through Greenland and Iceland and Canada. So I would say the first 2/3 of this book is her getting to Alaska. And I will say I did not enjoy those first 2/3 that much. I much more enjoyed it from a third of the way in on, when she actually is in Alaska in her cabin living her life there. I flew through those parts, but the first 2/3 it took me a long time to get through them. I just found it to be very meandering and cerebral and pretentious. Super pretentious. We're having these conversations, and I was kind of disappointed because a lot of the theme of this book is Abby wanting to reclaim a spot in nature, in the wilderness, that is a very masculine-dominated area. We talk a lot about Thoreau, Darwin, Jack London, Muir, these men who are known to be the naturalists and known to be the people who have a dominating space in nature and in that world. So she talks a lot about like wanting to have a space there, but she does it in a way that makes it very, I think, inaccessible. Like she just doesn't make nature accessible. I don't know. See, this is where it gets hard because reading it, so she's going out to do this to make a documentary of her experience. So we often see her talking about like, I get my camera out, which I found to be not entertaining, and I've got really nothing out of that. But I wrote that off as making sense because if I thought this was a memoir, it kind of read like her journal when she was going on this adventure, but now reading the inside flap and it's saying it's fiction. Why didn't we edit that out? I'm much more critical of this if it's fiction because then it's purely nothing but needs to be in here. This really needed editing. I felt like there were so many parts I just like did not enjoy. Like I said, I was just so wanting her to just be in Alaska, and those parts I really liked, but everything else I was like, why? Why are we talking about Ted Krasinski, aka the Unabomber, whatever? We really talk about him, and I'm like, I have no interest in reading about this white man who killed a whole bunch of people. I do not care if he cared about the environment. I don't care about his like letter that he wrote that described his life and what he thought, and nature needs to be preserved. I don't care about him. We should not be caring about him, but we really talk about him a lot. And it's just, this book was rough because I really wanted to love it, and it made me feel stupid. I think that's why I'm so mad at it. It made me feel stupid, and I don't think that Abby Andrews has a right to make me feel stupid. I don't know what this book is, if it's a memoir or if it's fiction. If it's a memoir, I like it more. I think if it's fiction, I think it was poorly edited. Because there's so much value if it's just her journal, and like, yeah, okay, then she's going to have these rambling thoughts. But if it's fiction, no point to it, you know? I don't know. If you're interested in reading books about nature and being in the wilderness like this, like I am, clearly I'm searching for those, just skip to a third of the way through mark, truly. Just go right here where it says into the wilderness. Just this. Literally this part, did nothing for me. This part and on, I guess it's more like halfway through. Yeah. But this part and on still has some stuff I don't love, but got a lot more out of than this part. But it makes me feel bad. I hate critiquing memoirs because that's a person's life. Like there's some rough shit that happens in this first part. But again, if it's fiction, then why do we have all of this when the book really is supposed to be about this? Anyway. That's my idea. I mean, that's my story on that book. I keep wanting to say it's fine. It's not really that fine. I should let myself not enjoy a book. I'm just mad because I really wanted to like it. And it made me feel dumb. Okay. The next one is another book that I own, but this one I have much more positive feelings about, which is weird because I have much more negative feelings about the content of this book and the topic of this book than I do the other one, because this is about racism. So, like, of course I do. So this is stamped from the beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram X. Kendi. It's just what it says. It's a history of racist ideas in America. And it's so well written. This book is just so important. Please highly recommend reading it. But I will say this is not an easy place to start with. You're really not. This is like jumping into the deep end. So once you've read a few things, I think this would be a good place to go to. I could just go on and on. I learned a whole bunch, and like I said, I found it very valuable to have this very in-depth and long history text to put everything in context, because that's really what it does, and I think that's really, really important. It's so important to read things that are about today and right now and how things are happening now, but, it's to understand what's happening now, you need to go back a little bit, truly. I also had a great time annotating this. So I have lots of sticky tabs and I'm very proud of myself. I need to go back to school because that was my favorite part, but I was excited because each color means something different. And then within that I have been, like, I would underline sections, and then each underline color means something different, and then I summarized each chapter at the end with sticky notes. So I really wanted to make sure I got everything out of this that I could, and I did, truly. I really just want to be like, everything's bad, because everything kind of is bad, but also I want to be positive, and not everything's bad, but, you know, the debate was recently happened, and that was bad. So take care of yourselves, but also educate yourself, please. Thanks. That's it. PSA from Kaylee. Anyway. A very different book. The next book I read is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. I heard really good things about this one, and, you know, it was a Ruth Ware thriller. It was pretty decent. I don't have much to critique from it, truly, and I don't have much to rave about it either. It was a great time, and I think we need to normalize reading books that are just exactly what they want to be. Why should I criticize the book for just doing what it needs to be doing? Because it truly just did what it needed to do. I should tell you what it's about. So The Turn of the Key follows our main character, Rowan, who finds a job listing as a live-in nanny, and it has a huge salary, so she decides to take it. So this takes her to Heatherbrae House, which is this huge manor, but, you know, it's not all that it seems. You know, it's not as good. It's a little too good to be true, let's say. There's a smart home system that is a little not great. It's a little creepy. It's a little too smart. You know what I mean? It's a little too much. But as she enters this house, she's really entering a nightmare. And the nightmare ends with a dead child and our main character in jail, which is where we start the book. We kind of hear her telling her story from jail, going back. It was good. Can't really talk too much about thrillers because I can't tell you what happens, that's for sure. I will say this because it only creeped me out at points. I listened to it on audio. This house is just creepy, and it kind of has the dichotomy of this really high tech and the smart home part, and then also, like, I don't know, is the house haunted? So, you know, we have, like, the creaking footsteps, and I was just sitting on my desk playing The Sims at, like, 11 o'clock at night, no lights on, and just hearing in my ears the creaking as I'm reading this audiobook, and I definitely had a point where I was like, well, I'm done for tonight. We're done now. We're gonna go to bed because I will creep myself out. So that was fun. I enjoyed, like, that little, like, creepy bit. I still think that The Death of Mrs. Westaway is my favorite, but this, you know, pretty on par with the other ones. It was good. The next book I read was Slay by Brittany Morris. This is another book I read in audio. This follows Kira, who, you know, just a normal teenager, dealing with the normal trials and tribulations of being one of only 4 Black students at her fairly white and well-off high school. So, you know, having to answer questions like, can white people have dreads? And so she's dealing with, you know, not wanting to be the spokesperson for all Black people. So while she's dealing with all of these things, she also secretly is the creator of Slay, which is a video game, which is kind of a safe haven for Black video gamers that is, like, pretty rooted and based in Black culture. But everything is turned on its head when one day someone who plays Slay is murdered. So a conflict that was based in the game left and entered the real world and ended up with someone dying. I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought it was super good. I love the characters in this book. I thought Kiara was so strong. I don't know, this was just one of those books where, like, when the characters are feeling it, you're feeling it. So, like, I'm reading it, I got so mad. There's this one scene, and if I just think about it, it makes me so mad. That a character is being ignorant, and our main character has to deal with it, and I just was furious. I was just, like, so upset. But I love it when books can elicit such a strong emotion from me. That doesn't always happen, but I was so there with our characters in this book, and I felt like I was right there with them and feeling everything that they were feeling, which was great and really a testament to the author's writing. The next book I read is Sweet Bitter by Stephanie Dandler. So this is the book that I knew nothing about until maybe a week ago when Noelle was doing a recommendations video, and I think someone had asked for a recommendation about a girl in her 20s figuring her life out, and this is what Noelle recommended. I then went to a used bookstore, which is a whole story in and of itself, but I went to a used bookstore, and I saw it, and I think it was $2.50. I was like, yeah, I'll buy it. Actually ended up being an ARC, which is kind of fun. Anyway, I bought it and I read it and I kind of loved it. I don't know. This is one of those books where I finished it and I immediately want to read it again. Because I feel like I couldn't have loved it that much. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened with this one, but I'll tell you what it's about. So this follows Tess, our main character, who is 22. She just graduated college, and she does the thing to do, which is move to New York. So she moves to New York, and she wants to have the New York experience, trademark New York experience. But she has to get a job, so she ends up getting a job at a really famous and glitzy Manhattan restaurant, and she's a back waiter, so that's like not even true waiter, she's like on the inside part, but it's about her in this restaurant, and it's about her figuring out her life and living her life and being messy, so messy. And I don't know, I loved it. I'm confused. I don't know, I just thought it was a great time. It's just, it follows her and the restaurant, and I loved the restaurant so much. I loved reading about being in the restaurant. I loved reading about the wine. I'm not a huge wine drinker, but I want to be now. So it's about food, like the way that this author describes food, yes, it kept making me think of Ratatouille. Very different things. Not the only thing the same as it's in a restaurant, but it's in a restaurant. When she's in this restaurant, she has this immediate attraction and lust for a bartender at the restaurant. So it's about them, and that's so messy and abusive and bad. It's a bad relationship, that going in, but I don't know, I'm just so perplexed by this, because I feel like on the tin I wouldn't love a book like this, but I think truly why I loved it so much is the characters in this book are so present. They are so present, and I'm in a time in my life where I feel like I'm not present whatsoever, and I'm just completely have to be looking forward, career-wise, life-wise, everything. I'm trying to get to the next step, which is not always a great feeling. So it was so good to revel in this character who was just so present and so living her life. And I really appreciated that she wasn't having the dialogue of having this service job, this waiter job, trying to get somewhere else. She wasn't I'm doing this for now, but in the future I want to be doing this. This is her present, and that means it's a little bit her future. I don't know how to describe why I loved that part of it so much, but it I don't know, I feel like it also validates that is a thing you can do. You can be a waiter. I don't know. This really just spoke to me in the moment, and I really feel like this is a circumstantial book. So I don't know if this is a book that I'm going to be to everyone, you need to read Sweet Bitter. I'm holding it. So I don't think I'm going to go to everyone and be you need to read Sweet Bitter. Because I think even if I had read it, 6 months ago, I don't think it would have meant the same thing to me as it did now. Does it mean something to me? I don't know. I just thought it was good. It is, I've heard people say, or I read some reviews and people said that it's pretentious, and I feel like that's a little bit on purpose. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, it's a little pretentious, but also you're supposed to see through that. I think that's what I mean is takes itself very seriously. She's very pretentious. She thinks she knows everything. This character is surrounded by pretentious people, but she doesn't know anything, and she starts to think that maybe they don't know anything either. See the difference? Maybe? I don't know. That could just be me. This was really good. Definitely loved the restaurant bits the most. But, this has all of the classic, New York in your 20s stuff. We have the party drugs. We have a lot of drinking. We have the sexual relations to go along with it. This one really perplexed me, but I enjoyed it. I'm confused by my enjoyment, and I may just read it again. So, who knows? But yes, those were the books I read this month. I think that there's 12 of them. Yeah, there's 12 books I read this month, which is so many. It was good. I definitely wish that I had more physical books next to me this month. That's something that I need to work on, especially considering that I just bought a whole bunch of books from a used bookstore. But I'm happy with what I read, and I feel like I have lots of reading goals for the next month because it's October, the spooky month. So I definitely have some books that I definitely need to get to this month, just simply because it's the spooky season. I'm excited for my reading to come, and I feel like I had a good reading month this month. It was a good time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to me talk through all the books that I read. As always, they will be linked down in the description. I will also make sure to put trigger warnings and content warnings by all the books because I think it's important. This was a long video, so thank you for sitting with me and listening to me chat. I hope you had a cup of tea or coffee or a snack. I hope you were maybe getting ready for the day as you watched. I hope you have a good beginning of October. We're finally here. I'm thriving. We're having a great time. Yes, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! So I've been recording for an hour, and I'm not finished with my books that I'm talking about, and so this is just gonna be so long. I'm so sorry. Thank you for watching.